My name is Josie Méndez-Negrete. I graduated from the UC Santa Cruz with a PhD in sociology. I came to higher education via community college. San Jose City College is where I first got my AA degree. Prior to attending community college, I was active in my community. I was one of the very initial neighborhood youth corps employees. I worked for my school, and I also worked tutoring students. And I'm talking about during the war on poverty. I was an adolescent, and being from a working class background and being in a single parent family, I qualified to participate in the employment program. So I started by helping out my peers. Education has been a real driving force for me. I think that not only academic education, but also vocational education. I worked with the Center for Employment Training. I came to run a program for women in untraditional jobs. And so the work that I did was youth rights, family rights. You know, I was active in the student movement, and I was active, as I said, in the anti-Bakke decision, fighting for affirmative action. But my most prideful moment was in the publication of my book, Las Hijas de Juan, Daughters Betrayed, which is an examination of incest in the Mexican-American family. It's an autoethnography / testimonio where I basically speak out and voice the experiences that I and my family survived in a very violent home where the women in particular were subjugated and basically reduced to slaves, if I may use that word. Life is complex, and it teaches us many lessons, but we can't learn them by ourselves. Sometimes it requires the support and the belief that somebody else has in you, that the story you carry and the life you've lived is a good source of inspiration and change for others. And so for me, I know I carried this book inside me, and it was in 1986 that I wrote what I thought would be a chapter in the book, examining the byproduct of my father's violence on one of my sisters, which was the birth of a child. And so I wanted to, first of all, let the world know that this kind of crimes inside the family are a fact, that they do exist, and that more often than not, that type of crime of violence and control with sex as the weapon takes place more readily in the family, because we assume that the privacy of a home protects those who subjugate or damage young girls and boys, because it's not just girls, boys can also be abused. And so what comes up for me when I think of the reason for writing the book is that I wrote it so that people could understand that it could happen to anyone, and that when it happens, it's not their fault. They didn't do anything. They didn't create the situation. All that they did was to learn to survive and to learn to understand themselves and to overcome whatever it was that they were living to become the persons that they are. And so for me, I wanted them to know that if it was happening to them, that they were not the only ones, that it had happened to a person like myself, and that, we can turn the adversity on its head, and we can learn from the lessons that we experienced in the trauma that became part of our survival. The first time that I read on the book was October 12, 2002 at the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center in San Antonio, Texas. And it was filled to capacity. The people that were there were students, people from the community that I knew. And there was no shame. There was a celebration of the resilience that we could carry. And there were questions that were asked about, why didn't you leave? How come your mother stayed? You know, basically premised on the ignorance of not understanding the way that violence and power, especially the power of the patriarch in our case, controls women and children. And so questions that they asked, I was able to answer, and I was able to show that despite what I lived, and I would say that despite what my family lived, because I didn't do it alone, I did it alongside my mother and my sisters and my little brothers, and I also did it alongside my husband. If it had not been for Jorge believing in me and knowing that I had a story to tell and that I was good at telling the story, and he needs to get credit above and beyond Sandra Cisneros. He's the one that told me to write the book that I carried that needed to be told. And that's how Las Hijas de Juan was excised from a 347-page manuscript to tell that story, you know, which deals with my life until I was about the age of 19.